48 seconds to go. All gonna come down to this. And the kick is good. Michigan stunned the college football world. Now we're seeing punches. This might get ugly.
Came up short here again today. Not easy to swallow at all.
A stunner at Syracuse. Come from 21 down and take down Miami.
Dabo Swinney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
That's about as good of a half of football in this environment in a rivalry game Sark could have hoped for.
Texas falls on it. Makes the recovery. Should secure Texas's spot.
Rivalry's one thing, but now to go compete for an SEC championship our first year, it's pretty exciting.
It's December 1st, and we currently live in a world where college football's four power conferences, the SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, and ACC, could all be won by teams that played in other conferences last season. Just like how we drew it up back in August. For more on that insanity, we welcome in the ace up our sleeve, Pam Maldonado. Pam, good morning. I'm still cleaning up the puke from how USC failed to cover 7.5 against Notre Dame yesterday. How about you?
I'm reeling myself. I, as a Longhorn, backed the Aggies and didn't get the cover. So you couldn't have asked for like a worse thing. Honestly, my alumni card should be revoked.
If you find out going into that game that Texas is only going to score 17 points, you're 401k'ing A&M. The fact that they only could hang one touchdown out of that game, absolutely brutal. All right, Conference Championship Week is upon us. Let's start in the Big Ten, where Michigan's upset win over Ohio State paves the way for Penn State to take on undefeated Oregon in Indianapolis next Saturday. Ducks currently laying 3.5, total of 50.5. Do we trust big game James Franklin in another big spot here?
Trusting in James Franklin, that was a real question from you. It's like believing that a taco won't fall apart. It's just always going to be a mess in the end. Franklin is 1-12 against top 5 teams, so you back Oregon Ducks, lay the points, and with no question, they have a balanced offense, and more importantly, they have Dan Lanning, who is an aggressive play caller. You know who's not aggressive? James Franklin. Predictable routes, and when he is aggressive, it's almost always at the wrong times. Oregon wins big in this one.
Yeah, I agree. Oregon's hung 30 or more in 10 of 11 games. This is a fast track indoors in Indianapolis. The Penn State defense is overrated. And then I want to focus on this, and I'm sure you remember it. Oregon, Ohio State at the beginning of the season. Late in the game, Lanning puts 12 guys on the field intentionally to draw a penalty and bleed off half the clock, leaving Ohio State with just one play. That's next level thinking.
Exactly.
That's not James Franklin. That's the guy coaching against James Franklin.
He's falling apart already before you even pick up the taco.
Right.
This is just something you want to stay away from.
Like, how am I taking 3.5 against that? No way. I'm looking at Oregon just like you are. All right, SEC Championship game in Atlanta features a regular season rematch between your Longhorns and the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia went to Austin back on October 19th. They upset the Longhorns as 4-point dogs. In the rematch, Texas laying 1.5, total 49.5. Do you see Sark and company getting their revenge here?
Look, for anybody who's watching, I am banned. I should be banned from making Texas predictions because I'm never right. I am the resident Longhorn, hook 'em horns, and I never get them right. But I like Texas to win in this one because they now have the ability to take the ball out of the hands of Quinn Ewers, and that's been my biggest problem. They have a much improved run game, which has now become a strength because they have running back in Quint Trevian Weissner. Back-to-back games rushing 150-plus yards, 5.8 yards per carry. And why did we just see Georgia struggle against Georgia Tech? The time of possession with that ground game. You can utilize Arch Manning at the goal line in red zone packages. I do. I got to go with it. I like my Longhorns to win the SEC Championship game in their first season in the SEC.
Given the way Georgia looked against Georgia Tech, I can't fault you. Keep an eye on the total here. In the first game, it was 57. We got 45 points. Texas only scored 15 in that game. Now they've readjusted it to 49.5. That's a big adjustment with a game that's going to be played indoors. I think we could be looking at a good spot for the over there. In the ACC, Miami turns a 9-0 start into a 2-2 finish and inexplicably misses the conference championship game. So now familiar face Dabo Swinney and Clemson find themselves laying 1, total of 54.5 against 11-1 SMU. 22 wins between these two teams. None of them were impressive. How do we handicap this one?
You know, back in week 5 on this very show, I talked about backing Clemson plus 275 to win the ACC. Somehow it is still live. I have no idea how that happened, but I expected Clemson to fall to South Carolina because of a solid pass rush and a mobile quarterback. SMU is not either of those things, so I like Clemson. I like quarterback in Cade Klubnik, top 15 quarterback grade in the country. He has experience here in postseason matchups. And SMU, hey, they have a good defense. Good for you. Which passing offense have the Mustangs played? Their defense has primarily faced run-heavy offenses, and still, they're 92nd in passing yards allowed. I think Klubnik eats them up, and Clemson's passing game is going to be a huge advantage here. I like Clemson to come out with the win in the ACC title game.
I'm leaning that way as well. It's so difficult with the available data points. SMU played one good team. It was BYU. They lost. Clemson, every time they stepped up, they got beat. Take a look at the South Carolina game from this past weekend.